Welcome to Sunday Journal. I'm Gordy Collane in the CapeCod.com News Center. I'm joined today by a special guest from the Massachusetts State Legislature. Can you introduce yourself for our listeners?
Fernandes, and I'm the state rep for Falmouth and the islands.
All right, awesome. And thank you again for taking some time today to have this conversation with me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So we've heard some interesting news coming from your office about some of your future plans related to seeking other seats. Do you mind just elaborating more for our listeners who aren't aware?
Sure, happy to. Yes, Senator Moran, who is the senator for the Plymouth and Barnstable district and has done a great job in that role, is stepping down. And so I've announced my candidacy for state senate for the Plymouth and Barnstable Senate seat. This is my hometown Senate district. I grew up in it. I love it. And looking forward to getting out, knocking on doors, making phone calls, and talking to people across the Plymouth and Barnstable district about their cares and concerns and how I can help them.
All right, awesome. So what made you decide that you wanted to try out your hand as a state senator? Just what kind of led to that decision?
Well, it's an opportunity to keep doing the work, but hopefully with even greater impact on the issues that I've been advocating for. You know, we spent a lot of time pushing for attainable housing. That is something that is completely out of reach for so many people across the Cape and Islands, across southeastern Massachusetts, and then on issues of environmental stewardship and combating climate change that are kind of looming over us. And, you know, as a millennial, there's no greater issue that's going to impact my generation and my children's generation than that. And, you know, look, I grew up during the height of the opioid epidemic that is still raging today, and, you know, have went to school with people who sadly have lost their lives. And so issues around substance misuse, addressing it, and then issues around mental health, which are so prevalent in this region too, are things that I want to focus on. And so this just provides an opportunity to make an even greater impact in the lives of more people and in working on those issues.
Now, I've seen a lot of initiatives that are definitely spearheaded by both yourself and Cape and Island State Senator Julian Cyr. Have you been in talks with him about what it's like to be a state senator? Is he going to be involved in this process somewhat?
Yeah, Julian's been great. Julian's a great friend of mine. We both ran the same year, not too long ago, and got elected the same year. So, Julian's a good friend of mine. He's been really helpful. He's supporting our race and is, endorsed in the seat. And so I'm really grateful to have his support. And, that's definitely someone I'll lean on for advice if I am fortunate enough to win the position. But so much work ahead, and I plan on putting the work in. No one's going to work harder to earn the people's support of the Plymouth and Barnstable districts, and really going to be out in the community talking to people about the issues that matter to them and their cares and concerns.
Now, you were first elected to state legislature as state representative at the age of 26. Do you think that your age, being on the younger side, gave you a unique perspective? And as well, what kind of spurred you on to want to pursue the state representative seat in the first place? What brought you to politics?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, look, I always wanted to get involved in in public service, and that's always been really important to me. My focus in life and in career is to try to just make a positive impact. And I know we kind of all try to do that. But for me, I thought, the best venue or maybe the best way to make an impact was a positive impact of people's lives was through government. And, my family, they came here 4 generations ago from the Azores. They're strawberry farmers. Life was never easy for them. My dad and his 8 brothers and sisters grew up in really extreme poverty on Cape Cod. None of them could afford to go to college, and my father actually dropped out of high school to start a landscaping company, and found success and worked his way into the middle class through that. And then I was able to go to college, an opportunity that my 8 aunts and uncles and my father never had. And so I feel incredibly fortunate. And I really want to give back to the community, the Cape and Islands, southeastern Massachusetts, the place that has given me and my family so much. And look, I know that stories like those, what we call kind of this American dream story, are being told less and less in this area because housing's so hard to find. We're having a kind of an affordability crisis across Massachusetts, and I really want to make it this beautiful state that I love and this region that I love a more affordable and welcoming place for middle class families.
Now, you've mentioned some of the some major goals for yourself as well as the region are tackling this affordable housing issue. You mentioned as well the opioid epidemic that we are still struggling with as we speak. Is there other issues that you're looking forward to highlighting in this potential seat? I know that we've had a lot of focus towards the state's net zero greenhouse gas emission goals for 2050 and some of the other ongoing efforts to expand green energy like offshore wind. What are your thoughts on some of these plans, and as we kind of move forward with seeing the effects of climate change? What is some of your stances and some things you want to highlight that would be under your leadership?
Yeah, well, I've always focused on climate issues. If we want to leave a livable planet for future generations, we have a lot of work to do to decarbonize our society. And right now in Massachusetts, we are on a pretty strong pathway to do that. We've passed some of the farthest reaching legislation in the country to get us to net zero by 2050. But we have more work to do. And actually, a report card just came out that showed some mixed results in Massachusetts. So while we're ahead on some issues and we're going to hit our greenhouse gas emission goals for 2030, or at least we're on track for it, we are behind in the number of electric vehicles that we should have on the road, and we'll have a lot of work to do if we want to hit those goals in the coming years. And we're also behind in electrifying our heating and having people install heat pumps in their homes. And so we have a lot of work to do there to further incentivize people to install those kind of heating and cooling systems. Heat pump is kind of a misnomer, but that's what they're called. But there's tremendous incentives out there for people to install, but there's still a big gap between, where we are and where we need to be. So a lot of work ahead. Maybe one of the biggest environmental issues that I'm going to be focused on and have been for some time is what I view as the complete negligence by Holtec around the Pilgrim Nuclear Power Plant and how they're storing nuclear waste. Holding them accountable has always been something that I've been a champion of, but we have more work to do there to make sure that we are protecting people's public health and the environment.
The Nuclear Decommissioning Citizens Advisory Panel was something that Susan Moran was heavily involved in over the past few months and years related to the Pilgrim Nuclear Power Station. So as well, what are some other major projects that are looming for you that are going to be taking up a major focus for you going forward?
I think one of the things that is so important coming up, it might be the most important thing coming up, right, is replacing 2 bridges. So this is the largest infrastructure project in the country right now. It's over $4.5 billion at this point. These bridges are quite literally our lifeline for people on the Cape and Islands. And they absolutely need to be replaced, but it's been a slow process in getting federal funding. So making sure that we are doing everything we can on the state side to be competitive and going after federal grants is something I'm going to be very focused on, and making sure that as the projects get underway, the voices of the communities on both sides of the bridge are being heard on this. So we have, ultimately, it's up to the federal government, who owns the bridges and maintains them, to come through with this funding. But there is a role for the state to play. I'm grateful that the Healy administration has doubled the amount we're putting forward to make our grant more competitive, our grant application more competitive, to $700 million that the state is putting up. So we're putting serious skin in the game. But this is a huge thing going forward that if elected, I'm going to be, as a rep, I've obviously been very involved in it, but if elected to the district that straddles the canal, that's going to be a main role to play.
Looking back over your experience as a state rep, do you have anything that you want to highlight or something you're particularly proud of when it comes to legislation that's been passed or initiatives you've kicked off, something that maybe you think helps highlight what you would be able to achieve in the state Senate seat?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, so I've passed over 30 bills in my time in the legislature, and I haven't been there for very long. And so, ultimately, I think this, should come down to results, what you're actually getting done for people. And we've been able to pass a lot of bills in a short number of years. One of my favorite bills that we passed was the state's first legislation on ocean acidification. Maybe the biggest issue impacting our oceans is that they're rapidly acidifying, and that's going to have huge impacts on the environment, and then for our region in terms of an economy, a huge impact on our shellfishing industry. So that was a huge win that I'm really proud of. And look, I think one thing I'm really proud of too is how collaborative I've been with other members of the Cape delegation. I very frequently work across the aisle with Representative David Vieira, who I share Falmouth with, and we work for the better of the local community, because a lot of the issues impacting us at the local level are not partisan. And at the end of the day, people want results. They want things that actually get tangibly done to improve their lives. And so I've been really proud about our work, across the aisle to deliver real things for people. And so, that's something I'm going to continue to do. In my time in the legislature, I've also been really unafraid of standing up to, leadership and being an independent voice. And, I was one of, I think, only 4 or 5 Democrats in the legislature who voted in favor of term limits during the previous speaker's tenure, who was the longest speaker serving in Massachusetts history. So, I've definitely taken stands on issues that have been things that I believe in, too, that are contrary to where maybe my party was at the time. So, I'm always going to be someone who, fights for this area, fights for the Cape and Islands, fights for the South Shore. And I want people to know that we're going to work our hearts out in this race to earn their support.
Now, I just wanted to ask before we wrap up as well, we live in changing times, especially from a technological point of view. COVID-19 brought with it a lot of transition into the digital space. Local community leaders have been highlighting digital equity as a major focus, trying to expand broadband access, calling it a necessity more than just a luxury, especially for a lot of local businesses. Can you talk a little bit about your plans for broadband when it comes to the Cape and Islands region?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things I'm proud of, I'm glad you raised this. We actually secured $100,000 in the state budget for Falmouth Net, which is a group looking to expand broadband in the town of Falmouth to compete with Comcast to give people an additional option. And so that's something we're actively exploring in Falmouth. And we also got another chunk of funds for the town of Falmouth for the Main Street businesses to hop onto the Open Cape network. And this came after this period during peak summer days where internet just crashed. And so, you only have so much time to make your money on the Cape and Islands, and being down for even a few hours during peak summer can really have a negative economic impact. And so that's what happened a few years ago. But then we secured money to get the Falmouth businesses directly onto Open Cape, high-speed internet access here on Cape Cod. And, we put up the funding to help them do that. So I want to see that expanded. That's an initiative we've been deeply involved in. That's an initiative we've gotten a bunch of money and support for. But frankly, I think, the state, we're fighting for that. But frankly, I think the state, they spend a lot of money on broadband in Western Massachusetts. And I get that because that is a place where there's some areas that just don't have internet. And so, yes, that should be a priority. But now that that's been expanded, the next step is expanding to underserved areas, which we are an underserved area. And so we're going to be pushing the administration and Mass Tech Collaborative to be focusing on the Cape and Islands and expanding additional access to broadband and high-speed internet here.
All right, awesome. Representative Fernandes, thank you so much for joining me for this conversation. Do you have anything else you wanted to highlight for our listeners about your run before we wrap up?
I just want to say that this is going to be a grassroots campaign. We're going to be out talking to people directly. I want to hear about the issues impacting people from across the district. So please reach out. Let us know how we can help. Let us know what's on your mind. And ultimately, we will carry those voices with us and those issues with us to the State House should this be a successful run. So looking to getting out there and meeting people and hopefully earning their support. So thank you.
Thank you so much for joining me for this conversation. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
I'm Gordy Gillane in the CapeCod.com News Center, and thank you for listening to Sunday Journal.